You hear a lot about people trying to set boundaries and being able to say no, but there are people who struggle to say yes. They say things like, oh, let me think about it, or let me get back with you on that, and they never do. What does it mean to say yes? What is involved in saying yes? This is a discussion today on This Life.
So I want to share with you ladies what I saw this week. On Sunday, I realized that I needed more weekend for my weekend. I needed a weekend for my weekend.
To recover from your
You mean
weekend.
to
from my
recover?
weekend. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And there were several things that my husband and I had to do. But one of the things that came up was our son had a soccer game. And so it was a choice between going to a meeting or getting up to run. And I realized, you know what? I'm going to say yes to going to sit and watch my son play in his first game with his team.
Oh,
So that was my yes. That's what I saw.
that's a good yes.
Yes, it was
That's a
a
good
great
yes.
yes. And it was fun to see him out there playing.
Wow. I saw this week something really interesting about someone who could only say yes. And she was supposed to sing at a wedding, and she went to practice with the organist, and he couldn't play.
Ooh.
And I was there, and I played for her before, and I said, would you like me to play? Because he's having a hard time. And she said, I don't know how to say no to him.
Wow.
And incidentally, he also wanted to sing along with her while he
Ooh.
played, which didn't even go. And so there she was, and I turned around and I looked up in the balcony while she was singing at this wedding. He was holding forth at the organ. He couldn't play and he couldn't sing, and she was rolling her eyes while she was singing. She couldn't say no.
Oh, no.
She just couldn't say to him, you know, how about if Barbara plays for me? Well, what a predicament.
Wow.
Well, I was watching two people have a discussion, and one person asked the other person whether they could, and they hadn't got any further than that, and the other person was doing this. And I just laughed because I knew that other person, and they most often say no before they say yes.
They didn't even know what was going to be
They
said.
didn't even know what was going to be said, just no. And then, interestingly, later they said yes.
Yes. Oh, wow.
So it was interesting to watch him, go from no to yes.
Wow, so his
Wow.
default position was
His default
no.
position was no.
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what we're talking about today in this little vignette I wanted to share with you. This is about Glenn. And Glenn had the traumatic experience of being molested when he was a small boy. This happens, we're finding out that this happens a lot more than we thought it did. In his subsequent therapy, he learned that he has a right to say no to anyone whose behavior doesn't seem safe. However, he's having trouble in his marriage when his wife wants to express affection to him. He says, I've gotten so good at shutting out the bad that I can't take in the good things.
So he can't say yes to her.
Now I find myself pushing my wife away, and I don't want to. So he's gotten to be an expert at saying no, and he can't say yes.
Do you think they're kind of like no people and yes people? Like, when you think of yourself, do you think of yourself as a no person or a yes person?
I think I often say yes. That's my default.
You seem
My default is
a yes
yes.
person.
I'm a yes person. And I think over the years I've learned to say no. And it has been something that I've had to learn because I'm always willing to help. I want to help and to help other people and be there for other people. So I'd say, yeah, if there's a yes or no person, I'd be a yes.
Well, I think if I'm concerned that I'm going to be taken advantage of, I can say no in a heartbeat. But what I find it difficult to say no to is some kind of thing that would be fun to do. And so I have all these fun things jamming up my schedule that I can't say no to because they're so much fun. And so I haven't figured out how to say no to those
Okay,
yet.
this is a unique problem that you have so many fun things that you can't get to the.
This happens, but this happens in our line of work all the
Yeah.
time, I think. That
Yeah.
Oh, you're counting the work things as fun things.
Oh.
Oh, that makes sense.
I don't hate my work. It's
Yeah,
like-
right. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Now I get it.
Yeah.
Well, I would say I tend to be a yes person, but I think what we're talking about today is how to know when to say yes, and about all of the things that come with saying yes, responsibilities. I'm thinking of Glenn here. Glenn, I mean, who knows whether he was a yes or no person
Right.
before, what he would have been, but now it sounds like he's careful and cautious.
I think that children by nature are yes people. I think they have kind of, to many things, they're yes people because they obey adults, they
Right.
do what they're told, and they are told, actually, small children who say no are considered bad, defiant children who are just looking out for bad things, and so they have to say yes. And so I think, and then I think they're so eager to experience life that they just say yes. So that sounds really fun. Kind of like me and my work. Oh, that sounds really fun. And so I think they by nature want to do a lot of things. And maybe that's how he was. So when you were saying, I don't know how he was before this happened, that's what came to my mind, that a lot of kids are yes
Right.
kids because they don't know what can happen. They don't think someone's going to take
They're
advantage.
trusting.
They're
They're
trusting. That's the
adults and the
term.
environment.
Right.
Okay, so now though, Glenn is a no, he's careful and he's learned how to say no well.
Yet he doesn't. It seems while he's learned how to say no well, in an intimate relationship with his wife, they're struggling with knowing when to say yes to his wife because of the difficulty that he's had in the past and maybe even dealing with it, the memories that come back, so that's a catch-22, because here you are with someone who loves you and wants to be close to you, and yet you, because of the experiences you've had in the past, your automatic response is now no. Even while you're with someone who's loving and caring. So Glenn, it seems, would have to learn now that it's okay to say yes to his wife. So he's learned, maybe have been a yes, became a no, and now he has to learn to the balance of when to say yes and when to say no.
That I want to tag on to what you're saying, Dilys, because I think when people learn to say no, it's a blanket no to everything.
Right.
And when they say yes, they feel it has to be a blanket yes to everything, and they don't realize that you can say, I'll take this part, but not that part,
Right.
and that they actually they can have a sense of agency to determine what they want rather than just to accept what's offered. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Obviously not to Carla, but
Yes.
well, you didn't say anything.
No, I'm just thinking that sometimes, I was trying to think of a good illustration. You know how, like sometimes at Halloween you get little bags of things rather than just items?
Right.
Of course, I don't go trick-or-treating anymore, but
Confess, come on.
you get these little bags, and some of them have nothing in them, and some are full of things. Sometimes I get the feeling that people, once they hear you say yes, want to cram that bag full.
Oh, I think that's
Because
true.
you've said yes, okay then, you can do this part of it, this part of it, this part. So it makes you afraid to say yes for fear that all of that will get dumped in there together. So I think for the people who tend to be no people, there are reasons. There are really good reasons.
That's a really good
for that.
metaphor. I like that.
Yes. It really is a good one. Yet it's so important to learn how to say yes. Even if you have the baggage of thinking, well, if I say yes, this is what's going to come, because you may miss out on something.
Well, and say it with meaning. Because, when people say, oh, okay, I'll do it,
Right.
you'd almost rather that they said no.
Because there's no sense of joy.
Well,
with it.
and I think that we have to give people permission or give people a realization that it's okay to say, well, give me a minute here. Let me think about this, especially for Glenn.
Yes.
He might have to stop and say, well, now, just a second here. Let me think. What am I saying no to and what am I saying yes to? Because and you both know this as well as I do, that when you work with someone who has been molested, that they will have to get the ability to feel in control of the situation.
Absolutely.
And I imagine there's some control issues in here, that if he says yes, then he has to take whatever is given him, rather than saying, this is how I'd like this to go. Or as I give affection, this is what I'm anticipating. Or I can do this kind of affection, but not that kind of affection.
So what does he do first? He finds himself in a situation where his spouse is frustrated. He realizes he can't freely touch her or express himself to her. What does he do first besides go see a counselor? Well, what does Glenn do?
Well, I would hope that they'd have a conversation about it. Although a lot of couples that try to have conversations about it, that's what makes them go to therapy, because they can't talk about it.
Right. But talking to each other, I think, is the first step.
And what
in a neutral place, I would say.
What would Glenn say?
What would Glenn say? I think I'd say the wife first. I would, I would say to both of them, honey, when I'm affectionate towards you, you push me away, and it makes me feel this way. And then Glenn could then respond. And
Glenn would say, you know what, I notice that I do that and I don't like it, because I really, really want to be affectionate and close to you. And I just am feeling like I have to put on the brakes, because that's all I'm used to doing. And I want to figure out how to do this, but I don't know how to do it.
Now, see, there's something very interesting there. You see how self-aware Glenn is.
Why, yes.
Because you were able to, Glenn was able to say, I know I do this, and this is what it means.
Right.
Most people can't
right
go that
about
deep.
That. You're right.
They just push back, and what do you mean? I'm not pushing you away. You're leaving me.
Yes, or else they'll blame the other person.
Right.
If you weren't so pushy,
Right.
if you weren't so demanding, if you didn't.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's a tough call for people to learn how to say, you know what, this is my. It's like some people who don't like to make a decision on the first go around of a discussion, no matter what it is. You talk about vacation with your family or something. The minute it comes up, they will want to say, okay, well, let's think about it.
Right.
Oh, that's true.
And they can't, and that's part of their personalities. They just can't decide on the first go around what that is. And wouldn't it be nice if they could say, you know what, I'm just not the kind of person that makes a decision like that.
Right.
Right. So maybe the first step is just thinking about whether a person is a yes or a no person.
Yeah.
And if they're a yes or no person, what do they know about that? While you were thinking, we had this conversation before about there's something that happens to me if someone calls in the middle of the night, like your phone dialing me by accident, calling me
My
at 2 in
phone
the
dialed
morning.
her by accident once.
And I picked up the phone, and and the other person will say, "Oh, did I wake you up?" Now, mind you, it's 2 or 3 in the morning, and no matter what is happening, I'll say,
That's right.
"Oh no,
I'm
I
fine."
was awake." Well, what in the world were you doing awake at 2 in the
2:00
morning?
in the morning, right.
Well, that's my default position,
Right.
and it comes from having an older sister share a bed with me. When she'd come to bed, that she would wake me up and get me to talk. I wasn't fully awake. And then she would regale the family with the things I said over the breakfast table, which was a lot of gibberish. And so I taught myself that if someone said to me, "Are you awake?" I would say, "Why,
Always say
yes."
yes. Yeah.
So I think that all of us have some kind of process around yes and
Yes
no's
and no.
that might be very different than that.
Okay, so we've talked about saying yes as possibly being related to previous experiences, such as Glenn. We've talked about the ability to say yes as being related to personality. Some
Right.
people are more yes people, some no people.
Right.
And we've talked about saying yes vigorously instead of tentatively. Anything else about saying yes?
I think saying yes, for people who are always saying no, if they learn how to say yes, it's actually a gift that they're giving to themselves, because they're opening themselves to new experiences. If your default tends to be no, 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 you don't know what you're missing. Because the one time you said no might have been an opportunity to make new acquaintances, have new experiences. So it's important to approach each possibility with a willingness to say, maybe this is the time when I'll say yes, as opposed to just automatically saying a no. While it is scary to say yes,
It's a gift. I like what you said, Dilys. It's a gift to say yes to people, because a lot of people don't really find a place to attach to you unless you say yes. If you're saying no and putting up or being very self-sufficient all the time, unless you say, that would be nice to have that, or I would like to try that, or I think people feel.
I can't tell you what that does just to hear you say that. It's amazing. The sound of it is peaceful. Yes, it's just got a very peaceful sound about
Oh,
it.
good.
Yeah. And I was thinking, as you were talking about, I thought to myself too, when people come to you and offer to help you, and when you are a person busy running and doing
that's
a billion
when it's
things,
difficult to say
it's
yes.
really difficult to say
Very
yes.
difficult.
Yes.
Because why?
Because you figure it's the control issue. You know exactly what you're trying to work on. You know the problems and the challenges that come. And if you have to say yes to them offering help, then you have to stop and teach them. I'm speaking from my own experience in that respect. What some of the reasons why I say no. Yet, I am missing out on the benefit of journeying with someone and teaching them something new and getting relief by just saying, yes, I need some help.
Sorry.
Go right ahead.
That is so interesting because for me, it's not so much of a control issue, is that I just don't want to bother other people. I know everybody's lives are just so hectic. And it is beyond me to be able to say yes, even if I really need something. So that's an interesting...
I was going to say that I know people who won't say yes because they feel that they're somehow deficient or failing if they say yes and invite somebody else to help them.
Right.
And so they'll say no matter how snowed under they are because they don't want to appear to be less than.
Oh, and that takes me to another thing I was thinking about is when we say yes, we ought to be ready to say yes. Because, I know sometimes I've said yes, and I'm thinking, why did I say
yes?
that? And then you have to kill yourself getting prepared to say yes when you should have waited to say yes and then follow it vigorously.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I want to go back to the other thing about why it's so difficult sometimes to say yes. What do you think it takes to be able to say yes, whether it's a controlling issue or whether an issue of you're not sure people really have the time? How do you come to the place where you can say yes to others?
Boy, I think it takes a lot of humility to say yes. And I don't think people would necessarily come to that conclusion unless they really thought about it a long time. But sometimes it takes a lot of humility to say, yes, I'm human like everyone else, or yes, I need something, or yes, I want something.
Or you just run right up into a wall, because that's the other part of it. When you don't accept the yeses and you find yourself in a place where you're like, I need, if the next person that offers, I'm going to say yes.
Well, I think what I'm afraid of is that you'll express your need to somebody, that it's really deep, and they'll say, which has happened, I'm sorry, I can't. And then I wish I hadn't
said anything.
Said anything.
Right.
I don't know if that's a vulnerability. I think it's difficult to be that vulnerable.
Vulnerability is a good word. I think a lot of people feel vulnerable admitting that they want or that they need. There's something about our Western society that makes us feel that we have to be strong and individualistic and we can do everything all the time. I think especially for women too. Yes. We feel that we're going to fail if we don't hold every piece together.
And yet, even as women, the yes connects us. It's the yes that brings this sense of community and family. I think
excuse me, Dilys, what you said as women.
Because she was saying as women, we try to keep everything together. I'm saying at the same time, women, while we try to hold everything together, also enjoy the company that we get and the camaraderie we get in sisterhood. And I think for me, one of the biggest pieces was becoming a parent and realizing that I was working and that I had this child and I had a community of friends, one of my very good friends who came over and said to me, if this isn't working out for you when I was trying to nurse my son, she says, you're going to go to sleep, I'm going to give him a bottle, and when you wake up, we'll try again. And I was like, okay. And I went, because it was this sense of trying to do it all, and I couldn't. I didn't know what I was doing. And, the trauma of trying to balance it all. There are those moments in life when the yes is what's going to save your sanity. The yes is what's going to bring you into a community that will say, girl, you're not the only one going through that. We've been through it together.
Yes. Yeah. This summer, I tried, in working with my nephews, tried to learn to say learn to say no in yes language. So like they would have to go, instead of saying, no, you can't stay up, I would say, oh, sure, you can stay up for 1 more minute. So I thought, how often can I actually say yes when it's a no issue. And it was amazing, actually. They responded much better.
That's a good point, because I know parents that, kids will say, can I get $25? I'm running low on groceries or whatever it is. And the parent is that automatic no. Or they'll say, oh, it's going to cost so much money and I don't have, and they go right to the no. Whereas if they could say, I get that you need some food. Let me see what I can do. And the answer might be no, but it's a lot easier to take.
Yes, or come back next month or something.
Hold your appetite.
Yeah, hold your appetite.
I've been telling my son, yes, you can have that. But do you have money in your pocket?
See, there.
Can you pay for
There's
it?
You
a
pay
yes.
for it? And he goes, no, but you can, Mommy. But I've been doing the yeses
We
with
have
that.
some email questions. I'll read one. Every time I want to take a trip, my husband doesn't want to. It is either too hot, too expensive, not the right time, or some other excuse. If he ever finally goes, he has a good time. But most of the time, we never go anywhere.
Wow.
That's a no person,
That's a
isn't
no
it?
That's a no person.
That's a no. And yet the irony of it is, when he finally does say yes, he has a good
He
time.
has a good time.
So you would think at this point he would learn not to say no right away.
Well, I wonder if he feels so out of control that he has to say no to
Yeah.
everything.
Well, especially if she's a person that's go, go, go all the time.
Well, that's
Right.
true.
So he may have, when the word travel comes up, he may have learned to say no.
Well, he could be very introverted too, and
Yeah.
she could be extroverted, like you're saying.
But
Suggesting.
that raises some issues, that there are triggers.
Yes.
There may be, maybe some people are triggered by the phrase, "Could you?" No. "Could you do me a favor?" No. There may be trigger points.
Could
Hey,
we
let's
talk?
Ooh.
Ooh.
Or the new 4-year-old phrase, I want.
Yes.
That's everything
Yes.
begins with I want. No. If
Yes.
it's an I want,
Yes.
it's going to be an automatic no.
So certain phrases trigger us.
I have
So
one.
what do we think should be done about this?
Oh, we were just going to move on.
Oh, we're just gonna. Oh, well, all right. Well, there's
No.
a pathetic case.
No,
So good luck, darling, with your husband.
No, I mean, it seems like she needs to be aware that perhaps she's married to a no person. And he's going to say no first, but to learn to continue on with the travel, and he may just enjoy it.
And also, as we were just talking about the trigger words, I mean, if it may be the way that she's approaching him about the trips, she's coming with the same way all the time.
Don't say the word travel.
Don't say the word travel. Maybe find out what it is that's causing him to automatically say no.
Yeah.
Because he does have a good time. If she started by maybe showing him the pictures first and saying,
Yeah.
remember when we went to so-and-so and so-and-so? What a
Or
good
maybe
time
it's
we
the
had.
flight that he's afraid of. Maybe it'd be better for them to drive. Who knows?
Well, here's one. The young woman that I'm dating does not want to kiss until we get married. Should I be worried about that?
Is this about saying yes?
Well,
So this person is a no person.
Yes.
Well, from the sound of it, she's a no person when it comes to kissing.
I'm just speechless. Someone else will have to respond to this.
No, there are people.
Are there
who-
people who don't want to
yes,
kiss
yes,
until
absolutely.
they get married?
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They want to wait.
Well, I know of someone who didn't want to kiss until they got engaged, and it was one of the most beautiful moments of their life to have waited for the
Waited
kiss.
for that kiss, yeah.
But let's not. I suppose we don't need to put a value on this. The issue is, if this young woman doesn't want to kiss until she gets married, then the young man needs to decide whether he can go along with that or not.
Because his question, should he be worried about that? I don't think he should be worried about it. It's definitely something they should have been talking about.
Well, and I would want to know whether it was a guilt issue or whether it was a decision for some other reason.
Well, that's the point. I think I would not take this just as a blanket statement of no, I'm
Right.
not going to do that. I
Right.
think I'd really want to know what the reason is and whether this person has had some kind of traumatic experience or
Right.
because a lot of people who say no for a long time, when it's time to say yes, they
they
don't.
can't.
Don't know. Right.
And so
that's
this
what
is
would
maybe
worry me.
this is what the issue is
Yeah.
is that a lot of people, especially those who are proponents of abstinence, they say no, 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 and then by the time they get married, it's really hard to just start the engines. It's like, how do we do this?
So
Well-
it's not that he should be worried as much as he should ask some questions.
There should be a lot
A
of
lot of
conversations.
questions.
Okay.
A lot of questions. Yeah.
Okay.
Here's one. Every Christmas, our family gets together at one of our houses, but deciding on which house is very difficult. Every time I ask my brother where their family would prefer to be, he always says, I'll get back to you on that. This is what you were saying, Carla. By the time he's ready to talk, plane fares have gone up. Is there any way I can move the process along because it makes me so frustrated?
Oh. Yes.
Wow.
That is so frustrating.
Well, it's
On
hard to
either
wait
side.
on somebody.
Yeah.
It's hard to feel like you can't make any kind of, you can't say yes or no. You have to wait on what someone else says.
Well, and that's the question. Do you have to wait? You know, is there a point at which a person says, I'm going to say yes even if you continue to say no? I'm going to get my own plane fares. I'm going to...
I would concur. I would agree with that. And saying if he's always going to be a no, this is the decision. We're coming to you. And
Or, yeah.
we're coming to you for this holiday season.
Or we're going to make our own plans.
Or we're going to make our own plans.
Or we're going to make a decision by such and such a date.
That's right.
Can we plan to talk on that date? And if you still don't know, then I'll make the plans. Something like that.
Sure.
Okay.
That works.
My wife is always able to make decisions faster than I can. So it appears as if I'm always saying no to her. In reality, I just need more time to make a decision. How can I communicate this to her?
That's the flip side of this other one, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, I think awareness is the first step, isn't it?
No, but that's a huge difference between people, is one who thinks very quickly and makes decisions quickly, and one who deliberates. Because the one who deliberates appears slow, but they're not. They're just thinking through.
Taking in
They're
all the
taking-
issues.
And they'll take it, you know, the one who makes decisions quickly may only consider 2 things, whereas the one who's moving slowly may take in 10.
Well, it's they've been together for quite a while, so it seems it's the getting to know and the communicating and working it through.
Right. Here's another one. My sister is very sick with a life-threatening disease. They don't say what the disease is. She won't talk about it. She's always pretended that problems don't exist. She shuts them out completely. Now she won't talk with me about being sick or what will happen when she dies. My goodness.
And that's a question that we probably will end on, is that what to do when people just can't say yes because of illness reasons, because they're in a lot of pain, because there are people who have hurt them, and to just let them be for a while and get themselves together so that maybe at a future time they can say yes. Well, that's all we have time for now. Thank you for joining us on This Life.